Hello and welcome. We are on page number 1.25 of ICAI study material. The next topic what we have to deal is what are the benefits of GST. So the GST brings in a lot number of benefits to the economy, as well as it has a simplified tax structure. Also there is a easy tax compliance. Also there are advantages for trade and industry. So GST comes or brings about a whole lot of benefits or advantages, and it is a win-win situation for the entire country, for the states as well as the central government. And also this GST will bring in benefits to all the stakeholders, be it the industry, be it the government, or be it the consumer. So who are the stakeholders in the GST? They are the industry, means the manufacturers or traders or the suppliers. The government, which receives the taxes. The consumer, who has to ultimately bear the tax of indirect taxes, be it GST. Now, what are the significant benefits which we will derive from GST? The GST creates a unified national market. Now, how does it create a unified national market? Because we have a common law. Of course, it is a dual taxation wherein for intrastate sale, both CGST as well as SGST or UTGST is levied, and for interstate sale, IGST is levied. But we already understood in the previous classes that though each state will have a separate GST enactment, but the overall structure will be common. And also the tax rates are common. Let us say a product is sold in Madhya Pradesh or Andhra Pradesh or Maharashtra or Jammu Kashmir. It will have the same rate of tax. Previously it was not the case like that. So by introduction of GST, the creation of a unified national market is possible. So the tax, as far as tax is concerned, it will be neutral. Means a product which is having the same classification will have the same rate of tax anywhere in India. And also GST will remove economic barriers. These checkposts, etc., will also be removed. Now GST will give a boost to Make in India concept, or the Make in India concept is a dream project or an initiative which has been undertaken by the central government, and the introduction of GST will make our products competitive internationally. Means because of introduction of GST, the prices will go down. So when the prices go down, our products become internationally competitive. Thereby the manufacturing in our country will get a boost. So the Make in India initiative will also gain a momentum by introduction of a GST. There will be enhanced investment and employment opportunities. What this GST has done is it has subsumed many of the central and state taxes, and this GST is a set of a comprehensive tax on goods and services. There used to be erstwhile CST, excise duty, etc. So this CST, which was levied by the central government and collected by the exporting state in respect of interstate trade or commerce, that rate of tax used to be 4% earlier. Thereafter it was reduced, and at the time when this has been subsumed into GST, the rate was at around 2%. Now what will happen is, because of the introduction of GST, there being a reduction in the multiplicity of taxes and the elimination of almost all cascading effects which are there, the prices will come down. When the prices have come down, we have already understood that our products will become competitive in the international market. Thereby what will happen is where the demand for exports increases, new manufacturers will start setting up of the manufacturing units. Thereafter, when the manufacturing activity takes momentum, what will happen is employment will be generated. Because if a new factory is set up, what will happen? The new factory will require manpower. So when the new investment is pouring in, when the new factories are set up, manufacturing activity gain momentum, and thereby the employment will be generated. And also GST has a simplified tax structure. Since GST has a simplified tax structure, what will happen is the ease of doing business will be there. Now previously there used to be a lot number of levies, a lot number of procedures were required to be complied, and some complex forms, complex procedures were there. But now by the implementation of GST, what has happened is there is uniformity in law, there are also uniformity in the procedures, and also there is uniformity in the tax rates that will be levied on products or services across India. What will happen is this will facilitate the ease of doing business. And also GST brings in certainty in the tax administration. Previously there were certain confusion with regard to classification of a particular product or a classification of an item as to between a commodity or a service. Now those type of difficulties have been eliminated, and a clear-cut classification system has been introduced under the GST. And also it is comparatively much easy to comply with GST because there are certain automated procedures, and the IT infrastructure will be used to a wider extent. Now almost all the procedures in the GST are automated. We already understood in the preceding classes that a common portal is set up wherein registration, filing of the returns, and filing of all other forms under GST and whatnot, all the issues will be taken care by that common portal. Now under GST, this GSTN portal, this common portal will have less interface between between the taxpayer and the tax administration. So there will not be any face-to-face interaction. Everything will be done digitally through the common portal. So this will have a many number of advantages, wherein the face-to-face interaction between the taxpayer and the tax administration is avoided. The corruption will also be reduced to a larger extent, and also whatever the taxpayer feels that previously when he used to attend to the tax officer, he might have felt some harassment from the other side. But now under GST, all these items or all these types of illnesses will be eliminated. And also GST will reduce the compliance cost, because previously if you are a manufacturer there used to be excise duty. When you sell locally in that state, you have to comply with the state level sales tax. When you sell the product to another state, you have to comply with the CST Act. You have to deal with the check post. You have this entry tax, etc., etc., etc. But now almost many of the indirect taxes have been subsumed into GST. Thereby now it is enough that you comply with the GST law. Now in this GST law also, the law, procedures, tax rates, etc. have been made uniform and simplified. Thereby the compliance burden will reduce to a large extent, with the implementation of GST. Not only that, the trade and industry will also derive some advantages or benefits because of the introduction of GST. Now under GST, you will be having seamless availability of input tax credit. The input tax credit will start at the beginning of the chain, and the input tax credit set off will be available to the end of the chain until the good or service is received by the ultimate consumer, who has to ultimately bear that burden of that indirect tax of GST. So previously what used to happen is, though there were some Senvat system in excise duty and service tax, though there was a VAT system in the state level VAT, but still there existed a certain form of a cascading effect. Like when you purchase interstate, the CST paid will not be available as input tax credit. When you manufacture goods from the state level VAT or from CST, the excise duty paid was not available. When you are dealing in goods, if you have some input services wherein you have paid the service tax on your input services, the input tax credit was not available under the erstwhile indirect tax regime. Now what has happened is, the input tax credit is available seamlessly across the board. So what will happen is, this will benefit the trade and industry, and also the GST is transparent, and also GST, what will happen is, will assist in widening of the tax base. Previously many states used to have many types of exemptions. Now under the GST, the exemptions have been rationalized, and also the tax base is widened. Then what will happen is, the burden on the already taxpayers will be reduced, because the government needs of taxes will be shared by many people. Where many products are brought into the GST net, what will happen is, the rates will be rationalized. When the rates are rationalized, the burden or the pinch will not be felt by a few people who are meeting the taxes, but many will share the tax. Next, this cascading effect will be eliminated, that we have dealt with elaborately in this class, and also in the previous classes also, that you can understand. And also there are a lot of benefits that have been derived by the small traders and entrepreneurs. In the previous class, we have learned about the threshold limit for registration. So some states have 10 lakhs as threshold limits, some states have 20 lakhs as threshold limit. Now if your turnover is less than 20 lakhs of rupees, you need not get yourself registered, and you need not pay the GST also. And also now in certain states, the threshold limit of 20 lakhs has been increased to 40 lakhs in respect of commodities, but that person should be doing only intra-state supply, and he should not be doing the interstate supplies. And also this increased threshold limit of 40 lakhs is applicable only in respect of those persons who are not providing services. So for services, the threshold remain at 20 lakhs. So what it implies is, until a threshold limit, if you are a small trader, if you are a small service provider, if you are a small newly established entrepreneur, your turnover does not exceed the threshold limit, what will happen is, you will not come into the GST net at all. Only when your turnover increases or surpasses the threshold limit, you will come into the GST net. And also, even when you cross the threshold limit, until you reach another threshold limit of, let us say, 1.5 crore, you can opt for the composition scheme, wherein you will not be bothered with all these compliances in the GST. You will be saved from certain compliances, and the rate of tax will also be a small percentage of the original rate of tax applicable on that good or service. So for small traders and entrepreneurs, the GST also has certain provisions wherein they will not be burdened with the regular provisions as contained in the GST law as such. There is increased threshold limits, and also there will be composition schemes which will be of a lot of help to the small traders and entrepreneurs. So what are all the benefits we have studied is also given here in a pictorial representation. In a pictorial representation, the benefits of GST has been given, the benefits to the economy, and also we have a simplified tax structure, and tax compliance is made easy, and also the trade and industry will derive certain advantages from this introduction of GST in India. Moving forward, we will deal with the constitutional provisions. In the preceding class, we understood that where any tax has to be collected in India, it is to be with the authority of a legislation. All the legislations should be within the purview and ambit of the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India is the supreme law of our country. So in our country, we have a three-tier structure. Means the three-tier structure means the first one is the union government, the second one is the state government, and the third one is the local authority. Let us say you live in a city of Hyderabad, which is in Telangana state. Telangana is in the country India. So if you are living in Hyderabad, you will be governed by the Hyderabad corporation, that is the local government. Thereafter you are governed by the state government of Telangana. Thereafter you are governed by the union government of India at the country level. So our constitution provides a three-tier structure. Now the levy of our taxes is also distributed by our constitution among these three governments. Let us say you are in a Hyderabad. You have a property in Hyderabad. You need to pay the municipal tax. You need to pay the sewage tax. You need to pay the water tax. So this water tax, sewage tax, municipal tax of your building comes within the purview of that Hyderabad corporation or Greater Hyderabad corporation, that local authority. You live in Hyderabad, you are doing a service, you are doing your profession. Your threshold limit increases is more than 20 lakhs. You are covered by GST. You need to pay, if you are providing the services within the state of Telangana, you need to pay CGST, you need to pay SGST. SGST goes to the state government. You live in Hyderabad, you are doing the profession, you have earned certain income, you need to pay income tax under the Income Tax Act 1961, it is the central government subject. So you being a person, individual living in Hyderabad is paying, or you are paying taxes. I gave you the illustration of three taxes. Municipal tax, you paid it to the Hyderabad Greater Municipal Corporation, or the SGST component you paid it to the Telangana state government. The income tax on the income which you earn, you paid it to the central government. So the constitution of our country has distributed the levy of taxes among these three types of governments. As already understood, Constitution of India is the supreme law of our country. It has a preamble, it has 25 parts, it has 448 articles and has 12 schedules. Now, the power to levy and collect taxes, be it direct tax or be it indirect tax, will be originating from the Constitution of India. Suppose there is an Income Tax Act 1961. This Income Tax Act 1961 is an enactment made by the Parliament of our country. Now this any enactment which is made by the Parliament of our country should be within the ambit of the Constitution. If any of the provision or rule made thereunder contravenes any of the articles of our Constitution, and that law will become ultra vires and is liable to be struck down. So any legislation or any law which has been enacted in our country, even if it contains a single provision which is in not conformity with our Constitution, it will be ultra vires the Constitution, and it is not at all a legal thing. It is illegal and void, and it is liable to be struck down. Moving forward, we have a pictorial representation of what we have learned now. Constitution of India is the supreme law of our country. It has a preamble. It has a 25 parts. Part means generally chapter. We are in chapter 1 of GST introduction in our ICA material of the given by the institute. So the GST, which is for 40 marks of our textbook, is divided into chapters for convenience sake. So our Constitution is also divided into 25 parts. Each of the parts comprises of certain articles. So all the articles of all the 25 parts put together, you have 448 articles. But if you take the law, if you take the CST Act or IGST Act, or for that matter Income Tax Act, we will have chapters, and thereafter we will have section numbers. In that we will have subsection. In that we will have clauses. But in our Constitution, instead of the term section, we use the term article. So you can equate this nomenclature of article to the section in our normal acts. It has a 12 schedules. So we have a preamble in our Constitution. We have 448 articles in our Constitution comprising of 25 parts, and also we have 12 schedules. We will refer to some of the significant articles of our Constitution. The first article what we will be dealing is article number 265. Now it states that no tax shall be levied or collected except by the authority of law. In our first class or second class, we already understood that if the government wants to collect a single penny, single rupee from the people, what it has to be done, there should be a law which will enable the government to collect taxes. So unless there is an authority of law, the government cannot collect taxes. Government can't collect taxes arbitrarily. It should be backed by a law, and that law should be made by the competent authority. If the law on an item which is made, that item, if it falls within the purview of a state government, then the law has to be made by the state government only. In respect of that item, central government has no authority to make the law. So the competitive person, or the person who has the authority to make that law, only has to make that law. Section 245, part 9, it will give the relationship between the union and the states. What it says is the power for enacting laws is conferred by the on the parliament and also on the legislature of the states. What does the article say? Subject to the provisions of this constitution, Parliament may make laws for whole or any part of the territory of India, and the legislature of a state may make laws for whole or any part of that state. Let us say we have a parliament comprising of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha is the lower house, Rajya Sabha is the upper house. If any item is within the ambit of the central government first has to prepare the law. It will be called as a bill. That bill will be introduced in the Lok Sabha. Discussions will go on. If the bill is passed by the Lok Sabha, it will go to the Rajya Sabha. Discussions will be carried on. If Rajya Sabha is also passes the bill, it will go to the Honorable President of our country for his accord or signature. Once the Honorable President of our country signs it, then it will become law of the land. So, the Parliament can make a law in respect of whole of the country or any part of the country. It can make a law which is applicable to all states of the country. It can make a law which is only applicable to northeastern states of the country. It can make a law through parliament or in the parliament which is applicable to only the state of Andhra Pradesh. Like that it can make. The state government has the power to make a law for whole or part of the state. The Andhra Pradesh government can make a law. They have to pass in the Andhra Pradesh State Legislative Assembly the bill. Thereafter, if that state has the council also, it has to go to the council. There also, after passing, it will go to the governor. If the governor signs that bill, it will become the law. Now, can Andhra Pradesh government make any law for Tamil Nadu state? No, it can't make. So, to what extent it can make? It can make a law which is applicable to the state of Andhra Pradesh or maybe applicable to a part of Andhra Pradesh like the district of Krishna and West Godavari. Andhra Pradesh legislature can make a law which is applicable to a particular district, a particular place in the state or applicable to the whole of the state. But it can't make a law which is applicable to the state of Tamil Nadu. It is not permitted by the constitution of our country. No law made by the parliament shall be deemed to be invalid on the ground that it will have extraterritorial operation. However, there should be a nexus with India. So this is an advanced legal concept. This concept may not be useful at our level, but what we can understand as of now is Article 245 of our Constitution says that Parliament can make a law applicable to whole or part of the country. A state can make a law which is applicable to that state or any part of that state. Article number 246 gives the union and state governments authority to levy taxes. Where the parliament make any law, then it will be applicable to, it can make a law to whole of the country or any part of the country. A state may make a law which is applicable to the whole of that state or part of that state. We have Schedule 7 to Article 246. Now, Article 246 has a Schedule 7. In that there are three lists: list 1, list 2, list 3. All the items or all the matters which have been included in list 1, on those matters the parliament or the central government has the exclusive right to make law on that matter. If any matter is included in list 2, the state governments will have the power to make a law in respect of that matter. If any matter is listed in list 3, both the state government as well as the central governments will have the power to make law on that particular matter. One thing we should understand is list 1 contains many matters, list 2 contains many matters, list 3 contains many matters, but out of all these matters, very few matters relate to levy of taxes. In list 1, the matters relating to taxation are given in entry number 82 to entry number 91. Now, since these matters are given in list 1, who will have the authority? The central government will have the authority to levy taxes in respect of those matters. In list 2, there are many matters, but only the matters listed from item number 45 to item number 63 alone will deal with matters relating to taxation. Now, on these matters, the state governments will have the power to make law. The central government or the parliament can make a law for the whole of the country or any part of the country. The state government can make a law for its state or any part of its state. Now, Parliament has also a further power to make any law for any part of India not comprised in a state, even if such a matter is included in the state list. You should understand this. A matter is listed in the state list, but there is a territory in India which is not comprised in any state. Then who can make the law in respect of that? The central government can make the law. Can we give an example to that? Yes, Union Territory. Union Territory will not come into the purview of any state. But a matter is given in the state list. Intra-state sale of commodities or provision of services. It may be covered by the state list. But there is a territory in India, Daman. It has no legislature. Then who will make the law to levy tax on intrastate sale of goods? Central government will do. That's why in GST, the UT-GST Act, which is applicable to union territories not having a state legislation, the central government will enact. The dual GST also, what we have said is, where in respect of intrastate, CGST and SGST or UTGST will be levied. So, where any territory does not fall within the ambit of any state, in respect of that territory, in respect of that matter which is given in the state list, the central government has the authority to make the law. Best example is UT-GST. Now, entry number 82 of list 1 deals with taxes on income. What does that entry state? Taxes on income other than agricultural income and other than agricultural income. So entry number 82 of list 1 of 7th schedule to the article number 246 states that tax on income other than agricultural income. This is within the purview of the central government. So Income Tax Act 1961 is a central government subject, and mind you, in the Income Tax Act under section 10 subsection 1, agricultural income is exempted. Now, why agricultural income is exempted under the Income Tax Act? The central government do not have the power to levy tax on agricultural income, because the constitution did not give the power to the central government to levy tax on agriculture income. It is included in the list 2 of the 7th schedule to article number 46 to 46. State governments alone has the power to tax income on agricultures. Now, entry number 83. Duties of customs, including export duties of export duties. So this is entry number 83. Entry number 82 of list 1 deals with the taxes on income other than agricultural income, and entry number 83 deals with the duties of customs, including export duties. So the central government derived the power to levy customs duty on imports into and export out of India by deriving the power from entry number 83 of list 1, which is the union list of the 7th schedule, to article number 246. Now, constitutional amendment 101. So we have this Constitution 101 Amendment Act 2016. Now what does this act do? This act gives power to levy goods and service tax. Now this article number 246 capital A was introduced into the Constitution of India by virtue of Constitution 101 Amendment Act 2016. Now, before we go into and understand the amendments brought about by this Amendment Act 2016, first of all, we should understand now why there is a need for a constitutional amendment to implement GST. Now, we already understood that the Constitution of India, in article number 246, schedule 7, there are 3 lists: union list, state list, and the concurrent list. List 1, list 2, list 3, which contains matters in the list. In list 1 you have certain matters, list 2 certain other matters, list 3 certain other matters. If a matter is given in list 1 of 7th schedule to article number 46, it is the domain of the central government. Central government can make law on that matter. If an item is given in a list 2, then what you have to do? Only the state governments, respective state governments will have the authority to levy or to make laws in respect of that matter given in list 2. For matters given in list 3, both state government as well as central government will have the authority to make the laws in respect of matters stated there. Now mind you should understand that these list 1, list 2, list 3 contains many matters. Out of those matters, only a few matters relate to taxes. Now prior to this 101 Constitutional Amendment Act, previously the levy or the authority to levy tax on interstate sale of goods was with the central government, but the tax used to be collected by the exporting state. Excise duty is a subject matter of central government, which was given in list 1. The service tax was levied by the central government by the residuary authority given in the constitution to the central government. The residuary authority vests with the central government, where any matter is not dealt in list 1, list 2 or list 3. In respect of that matter, the central government has the authority to levy. Now deriving power from that residuary authority, central government has levied service tax. Of course, the service tax did not have any act by itself, but the law is derived from the Finance Act of the year in which the service tax was introduced. Later on, there were amendments brought about by the subsequent finance acts. Now, prior to the 101st Amendment of the Constitution, the power to levy tax on intrastate sale of commodities vests with the state governments. Means where purchase or sale takes place within a state, the power to levy tax vested with the state governments, which is a matter specified in list 2 of the 7th schedule to article number 246. And also, the central government did not have the authority to levy tax on intrastate sale of commodities. The state governments did not have the authority to levy tax on services. The customs duty is the domain of central government. Even now, the basic customs duty is not subsumed into GST. Only the countervailing duties are subsumed into the GST. So, there are many barriers, and also the states used to levy certain other levies like entry tax, octroi, luxury tax, entertainment tax, tax on lottery and betting, gambling, and also certain local taxes have been levied by the panchayats and municipalities and corporations. So, an amendment in the constitution was necessary to enable the integration of central excise duty, additional duties of customs. Mind you, basic customs duty is still now levied by a separate legislation, Customs Act. But the additional countervailing duties were subsumed into the GST. And state VAT laws and certain specific taxes and service tax were all subsumed into a comprehensive law called goods and service tax. Now, ours is a dual taxation where the central government as well as the state government simultaneously levy taxes in respect of intrastate supply, and in respect of interstate supply there will be GST, and there is a mechanism to transfer the tax amount from the exporting state to the consuming state. So to bring about or to enable all these changes, the constitutional amendment was necessitated. Now, what were the significant amendments brought about in this 101st Amendment, Constitutional Amendment Act? Now, the Constitution Amendment Act was passed in the year 2016. The Act has 20 sections and a new Article 279A was introduced. Now this 279A article will empower the President, Honorable President of India, to constitute a body called GST Council. Now what is this GST Council? What is the composition of GST Council? We will deal in a later part of our discussion. Now, this GST Council was notified on 12th of September 2016, and all other remaining provisions of this Amendment Act were notified on 16th of September 2016. Now, we will go about the significant amendments that have been brought about in the Constitution through this Constitution 101st Amendment Act 2016. Now, a new Article 246A has been introduced in our Constitution. Now, what that 246A article says? Notwithstanding anything contained in Article 246 and Article 254, Parliament, and subject to clause 2, the legislature of every state has the power to make laws with respect to goods and service tax imposed by union or by such state. Now this 246 capital A article will give the power to both the central government and the state government to levy and collect taxes by name goods and service tax. Now, Parliament will have the exclusive power to make laws with respect to goods and service tax where supply of goods or of service or both takes place in the course of interstate trade or commerce. So, if it happens to be intrastate trade or commerce, both central government and the state government has the power to levy and collect goods and service tax by virtue of first proviso to the article number 246 capital A. Now, if the supply of goods or services or both are taking place between states, that is from one state to another state, then the parliament, the central government has the authority to levy. So, IGST is a subject matter of central government, CGST is a subject matter of central government, and SGST is a subject matter of the respective state governments, or if it is a union territory, you will have UTGST, but UTGST will be a subject matter of a central government. It will, because the union territory without legislature cannot pass a law, so the central government will pass that law, which will be applicable to the union territory. Now there are union territories with legislatures. Of course, though they will have legislature, they will not have this full statehood. The example being New Delhi and the Pondicherry or Puducherry for that matter. Now these two union territories have the legislatures, but they do not have the full statehood. Since they have their own legislature, they will be able to formulate and pass their own GST Act. Now, this there is an explanation to this article number 246A. What does it say? It says that in respect of goods and services referred to in article number 279A clause 5, it will take effect from the date recommended by the Goods and Service Tax Council. This Goods and Service Tax Council was constituted under an article or authority derived from the Constitution, which we have referred to at earlier part of our discussion, 279 capital A. Now, what are those goods and services? We already referred to in the previous classes. One of being this what you call petroleum crude, aviation turbine fuel, petrol, diesel, all these items, 5 items, they will be brought into GST net from a date which will be specified by the GST Council. So, in a nutshell, what this article number 246A does, article 246A grants power to central government as well as the state government to make law with respect to GST, and that GST will be on supply of intrastate goods or services. Now, in respect of interstate supply of goods and services, central government will have the power and IGST was enacted. And in respect of certain 5 items being petroleum crude, high speed diesel, motor spirit or petrol, natural gas, aviation turbine fuel ATF. These 5 items will be brought into GST net in future, the date on which the central council or the central council will recommend the date to the GST Council will recommend the date from which these 5 items will come into GST net. Now you should understand that 246A article of our constitution is overriding article. What do you mean by overriding article? Where something is said contrary in another article, but still this 246A stands. That implies that 246A article will override the provisions contained in other articles of our constitution. And to be more specific, it says that 246A overrides 246 article and 254 article. Now 254 article deals with the supremacy of the laws that are made by the parliament. Now article number 269A. Article number 269A states that GST in the course of interstate trade or commerce shall be levied and collected by the government of India and will be apportioned between the union and the states in the manner as may be provided by Parliament by a law on the recommendation of Goods and Service Tax Council. Now, for interstate supply, what does article number 246A state? 246A state that in respect of interstate supply of goods and services or both, goods or services or both, Parliament has the power. Now, this money collected by the central government in respect of interstate supply, it has to be apportioned between the union and the states in a proportion or in a manner. Now that manner should also be stated in a law, and the manner will be recommended by the GST Council. And also where any goods or services or both are imported into India or exported out of India, they will also be called as interstate supply. So apart from supply being made from one state to another state in India, where goods are imported into India or exported out of India, goods or services, it will also be deemed as interstate supply. Therefore, on these items, the central government will have the power. IGST will be levied. However, the basic customs duty still remains. The basic customs duty is the domain of the central government only. So, for import or export, now what the government will levy by way of IGST? Previously, they used to be something called as countervailing duties, or in short, we used to call them as CVDs. Now, instead of CVD, the IGST will be levied. Also, in our previous class, we understood through an illustration that the SGST utilized for making the payment of IGST will be transferred by that state to the central government, and where IGST is utilized to pay the SGST of a particular state, then the central government has to transfer that amount to that state. We understood that the GST is a destination based taxation. The consuming state will get the money of tax. So this mechanism of transferring of SGST used to pay IGST, that is state government has to transfer to central government. IGST used to pay the SGST, central government has to transfer to that respective state government the money. Now, Parliament will also formulate principles regarding place of supply and when supply of good or service or both occur in interstate trade or commerce. So, the central government will decide the place of supply. Now, for payment of tax and determining the levy, the place of supply is very important. Now, if the supplier is in one state and place of supply is another state, then it will be called as interstate supply. For interstate supply, IGST is to be paid. So, first of all, principles should be determined as to determine when a supply has taken place in the course of interstate trade or commerce. Now, those principles of determining the place of supply and the supply of goods or service in the course of interstate trade or commerce, those principles will also be laid down by the central government. Means they will be, these principles will be given in the IGST Act. Next, moving forward, definition of goods and service tax, definition of services, and definition of state is also very important. Now, when the supply of goods from takes place from one state to another state, it is interstate supply. IGST is leviable. So you should know the definition of a state. Now, what is this tax? Goods and service tax. So you should understand what is goods and service tax. Now, classification has of goods is based upon HSN. Classification of a service is based upon a new system of classification wherein you have groups, chapters and subheadings, headings and subheadings. And based upon this classification, the rate of tax is determined. This rate of tax is to be applied on a value to arrive at the amount of tax payable. So you should also be able to classify between a good and a service. So all these three definitions are given in the Constitution itself. So what do you mean by goods and service tax? Means any tax on supply of goods or service or both, except the supply of alcoholic for human consumption. This is very, very, very important. The Constitution of our country itself do not give the power to levy GST on alcoholic liquor for human consumption. It remains with the states where this is subjected to excise duty of state as well as the CST or the VAT of the state. Now, so GST means it is a tax on supply of, so it is not on sale. Mind you, I use the terms sale and supply interchangeably, but mind you, the GST is a levy of tax on supply of what? All goods and services, but it is not a supply on alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So the alcoholic liquor for human consumption is kept out of the ambit of GST. What do you mean by service? Service means anything other than a good. So what do you mean by a good? We have a separate definition. What do you mean by state? With reference to article number 246A, 268, 269, 269A and article number 279A, means this deals with GST Council. This is with relation to the authority given by the Constitution to levy goods and service tax. A state means includes a union territory with legislature. Now you should understand that Delhi and Puducherry are still union territories, but they have their own legislature. They will have state elections. They will have chief minister. They will have a governor. For union territory, you call it as lieutenant governor. A union territory will not, without legislature, will not have the assembly and a chief minister and the council of ministers. But a union territory with legislature, being Delhi and Puducherry, they will be considered as a state as far as these articles are concerned. So for the purpose of GST Act, Delhi and Puducherry, both union territories which have legislation, they will be considered as a state. Now what is good? Good is defined to include all materials, commodities and articles. All materials, commodities and articles are included in goods. It is an inclusive definition. Article number 279 dealing with GST Council. Now this Article 279 will give power to the President of our country to create or constitute a GST Council. Central and states jointly will form a forum. That forum will be called as Goods and Service Tax Council. Now, this authority to constitute the GST Council vests with the Honorable President of India by virtue of Article number 279A. Based upon this power derived from the Constitution, the GST Council came into force on 12th of September 2016. And the President of our country constituted this council on 15th of September 2016. Now this article came into force on 12th September and the council is formed on 15th September 2016. Now, who will comprise of this council? The Union Finance Minister will be the chairman of the council, and every state will have a representation, and every state will send one member, and that member will be the minister who will be in charge of finance or taxation, or any other minister who have been nominated by that state and union territory with legislature. So the GST Council will have the Union Finance Minister as the chairman, and all the states including union territories having legislature, means Delhi and Puducherry, will have a member in that, will be a member in that council, but they will be represented by minister, and preferably the finance minister or minister for taxation, or else what they can then do, they can nominate any other minister. Also, union minister of state in charge of revenue or finance is also its member. So union finance minister will be the chairman, union minister of state finance or revenue will be a member. All the states including 2 union territories with legislation will also be members, and they will be represented by their minister of finance or any other minister who have been nominated by the government of that state. Next, moving forward. Now, what are the functions of this council? It will make a recommendation to the union government as well as the states on certain important issues. What will be the important issue in the, or what will be the important issues in the GST, like rates of taxes, giving exemptions or withdrawing exemptions, what will be threshold limits up to which composition scheme should be there, or where until what threshold limit registration is not necessary, where there are any disputes among the stakeholders, like two states are fighting for something. So for dispute resolution also, this council has the authority to settle. Now, it will also recommend special provision for special category states. We have 11 special category states as far as GST is concerned. To name them, the northeastern states of Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, the northern state Jammu Kashmir, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura, Sikkim, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. So from the northern region we have this Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh. This we have this Uttarakhand, and the remaining are the northeastern states: Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, Tripura. The other 3 states being Jammu Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Now for these states we will have special threshold limits for registration as well as composition as well as exemptions, and uh, these are special category states. Now, GST Council has also the authority to bring these five items of petroleum crude, petrol, diesel, aviation turbine fuel, and this natural gas into the ambit of GST on a date which will be notified by it in the future. Now, how are the decisions taken in the GST Council is the next question. You will understand, or you already understood, that GST Council comprises of the central government as well as the state governments as well as the union territories with the state legislation. Now all these people are members in the GST Council. The GST Council is constituted, the president of our country has the power to constitute this GST Council. Now, how are decisions taken? The GST Council has a functions like determine the rate of taxes on commodities and services. They can also determine the items on which the exemption is to be given, or items on which the exemption is to be withdrawn. If there are any disputes, they will resolve the disputes. All these things, and also specify the dates with regard to date on which these five items are to be brought into the GST ambit. Now, how these decisions will be taken? By voting. Now, to any decision to be implemented or to be taken, then they require 3/4 of weighted votes of the members present. The votes have weightage. The center has a weightage of 1/3 of the votes, total votes cast, and votes of all the state governments taken together will be having a weightage of 2/3 of the total votes cast in that meeting. So what will happen? Total votes cast in the meeting has to be taken. Center has a weightage of 1/3 of votes cast, and the state governments will have a weightage of 2/3 of the total votes cast. So this is chapter 1. We have questions to test our knowledge. So the first question 2, we have some multiple choice from question number 1 to question number 6. Thereafter, we have from some descriptive questions from question number 7 to question number 14, and the answers were also given after the questions are complete. So friends and students, these are exercises for you to do, and do it as a homework. In the next class, we will be commencing the chapter number 2. We are dealing with or we are studying the ICAI study material, which is downloaded from icai.org website. So for the next class, we will be starting chapter number 2, and you have to keep ready your downloaded material or the material which was already received by you. If it is the latest updated material applicable for May 2020 and November 2020 examination, it is fine. If you have the book of an earlier version, you need to download it from ICAI.org. Let me download it now itself. So since we are done with this material, what I will do is I will go to the ICAI.org, go to the student section, BOS knowledge portal. Now intermediate course, taxation, study material for May and November. Go to study material, I need to go to part B study material. and go for chapter number 2, supply under GST. We have total 66 pages in this chapter 2 dealing with supply, and this is a very important topic because the levy of GST is on supply of goods or services. So we should thoroughly understand as to what do you mean by a supply, which we will be dealing in our next